In today's video, we'll be continuing our accessibility series where we test different tabs, widgets, and blocks in WordPress. For today's episode, we'll be testing out two popular competing page builders, which are Elementor and Breakdance. I'll also be testing out the JetTabs widget by Crocoblock. We'll be testing out how accessible their tabs widgets are, and I'll be listing out any potential issues that I found. If you just want to see the list of the issues and what are the potential solutions, then you can skip right through to the end where I will list everything out. But if you want to see the process, then you can stick around and go through how I test all of them. So if that's something that interests you, let's get right into it. For today's video, we'll be testing out Elementor version 3.21.1, Elementor Pro version 3.21.0, and JetTabs version 2.2.2. We'll also be testing out Breakdance version 1.7.0. For the Elementor, I've gone ahead under the Elementor settings and then features. I've activated the grid container, the flexbox container, as well as the nested elements. So we'll be using the nested tabs for this example. So now let's jump right into the examples, and I'll be showing you 5 tests, which are the HTML test, then we'll do the mouse test, then I'll do a keyboard test, then I may throw in an automated test before I'll do the screen reader test. So now let's jump right into the examples. If you want a complete step-by-step breakdown of how an accessible tab should look like and how to test for accessibility, then you can check out my previous video, which I'll link to in the description, and there should be a card popping up somewhere. There you will learn how to test for accessibility and how the HTML structure of an accessible tab should look like. In the previous video as well, I showed the comparison between different tabs in Bricks, so the Bricks nestable tabs, the frames, and the Bricks extras. And I'm glad to see that they've taken on board the issues that I raised and they've promised to fix those issues. So that is a plus. And I'm hoping that if I find any issues here with Elementor or Breakdance or JetTabs, that they will take those issues on board and fix it as well. But that's just me hoping. So anyway, this is the tab I built in my previous video. And basically, all you have to do is that when you tab through to it, you should be able to focus on the active state. And then the left and right arrow keys should move across the tabs. And then when you press the tab key again, it should move from the tabs to the tab panel. And then when you press the tab key, the focus should move outside of the tab panel if there is no focusable element within the tab panel to the next focusable element, which is this copy button here. And that's it. So now let's go ahead and see how each of those tabs fare. So this is the example for the Elementor tabs. This is the example for the Crocoblock tabs. And then this is the example for the Breakdance tabs. So we'll start by testing the HTML structure, followed by a mouse test, then a keyboard test, and finally a screen reader test. So to check the HTML structure, just come over to the tabbed interface, right click, and then choose Inspect. That will open up the Dev Tools. And then, as you can see, the structure, we have a div and a set of buttons. The div has the role equal to tab list, and the buttons have the role equal to tab, which is perfect. Then we have the tab panel, which is wrapped in a div. So that's div with the role equal to tab panel. So that's all correct for the HTML. Then to make sure that all of the other information are accurate, I'll use the accessibility tree so I can see everything nicely. So I'll click on this tick man. You can access it by going over to the tabs on the right hand side. You see accessibility tab. If it's not there, you can click on the drop down and then you should see it there. Then I just enabled the full page accessibility tree. Then to ask me to reload the dev tools, and then this stick man should be there. So now when you click on it, it gives you the accessibility tree with the role, name, and the values with the states and properties. So that's easier for me to see. So when I click, I can now choose the exact element I want. So now this is the tabbed interface. We have the tab list with the tabs, and then we have the tab panel. So all of them are correct. The tab list doesn't have a name. but at least it has the role equal to tab list, which is correct. Ideally, we should also have a name as well so that it can differentiate one tab list from the other. The tabs themselves, they have names because they have visible text. Because the way names work is that first it looks for an area labeled by. If you can't find that, then it looks for an area label. Then it looks for the visible text. Then it looks for like alt text, the title, and if it's like a form, it looks for the label of the form and so on and so forth to get the accessible name. So in this case, it's the visible text that is the accessible name. Then the tab panel also has a name because it has an area labeled by, which is linked back to the tab that controls it. So that's why we have this relationship. The tab panel has the name, which is equal to the name of the tab. So that's perfect. There are only two problems I'm noticing here. First, there is no tab index on the tab panel, so it is not focusable. So if we have a situation where there is no link within the tab panel, a screen reader user will not be able to have access to that tab panel. So that's the problem. So the fix is that they should add a tab index of 0 to all of the tab panels. The second issue I noticed is that there is actually an area label, but it is on the wrong element. Basically, it's on the wrapper div, which has no role, instead of the tab list. And generally, a div without a role is ignored by screen readers, so no screen reader will even announce this area label. And I'm even happy that it's on the wrong element because this is not the appropriate name to give to a component. Ideally, a name should describe what that component is, not giving us information of how we should operate the component. For example, we have with our navigation, you can say primary navigation. So you just give the name of primary. Then we know that the primary navigation is different from the footer navigation. You don't want to start naming it a list that has a drop-down arrow with 2 letters and something. Those are not important information. Those information will be given to the screen reader user as and when needed. You don't need to start adding it as the name. So this is not a proper name to give to an element, and it is on the wrong element. So if Elementor wants to put an area label, then it should be user-defined. You should not force a name on an element because there might be 4 elements on the page and all 4 elements will have the same name. And you don't want to be naming all your children David. Then how do you differentiate them? You want to name them unique names. So it's better to just put a different UI section there in your editor page where you can say accessible name or something that is easy for the user to define by himself. You shouldn't be forcing a name on a user. So those are the 2 problems I found, and they are quite easy to fix. They basically just need to remove the area label and then make it user-defined on the tab list. And then they need to put a tab index of 0. So now let me go to the Crocoblock on, and we'll do the same thing. I will right-click and choose Inspect. It is using divs, so it's not using a button. But the div has a role equal to tab list, which is correct. The other div have roles equal to tab, which are correct. And then there are divs with the role equal to tab panel. So that's correct. So now let me open the accessibility tree so I can see how it is clearly. So from the accessibility tree, it has the tab list. It doesn't have a name, which is fine, but it would be nice to give users the ability to add a name, especially when there are multiple tabs on the page. Then it has all of the tabs with their names based on the visible text, which is correct. Then it has the tab panel. But now I can already notice 2 problems here. One, the tab panel doesn't have an accessible name, so there's a problem with the way they're using the area labeled by, which links back to the tab. So maybe something is wrong there, so it's not giving it an accessible name. And then secondly, there is no tab index of 0, so it is not focusable. So those are the 2 problems I can find already. So they should check that the tab panel is having an area labeled by, which links back to the tab, and then they should put a tab index of 0 on the tab panel. And if possible, they can add a accessible name here, which is user-defined. And there's another problem. They are using the expanded attributes, so they're using area expanded. Area expanded is mostly for things that drop down, like accordions or drop down menus in your hamburger menu and things like that. It is not for tabs. Tabs use area selected. You should not combine them together because there's too much noise in the things that are being explained to a screen reader user. They just need as little information as possible that will give them all they need. They don't need to start adding redundant information. So this area expanded should be removed. Should only be area selected. So that's it for the JetTabs. So now let me go and see Breakdance. Right click, inspect. And they're using divs and buttons. So the div has the role equal to tab list, correct? The button has the role equal to tab, correct? And then this will be the tab panel. Let's see. So it has a div. Okay, so it's inside the wrapper div. So there's a div with a role equal to tab panel. Okay, so now let me check the accessibility tree. It's easier to visualize. So yeah, we have the tab list. It has an accessible name, which is on the right element, which is on the tab list, so that it's an accessible name. Then they have the tabs. Then we have the tab panel with an accessible name and the tab index of 0. So this is the best way to do it. They're following it properly. The only thing that this is not user-defined. The area label should be user-defined. You should not call it content tabs and make it fixed, because now if I have 4 tabs on the page, a screen reader user will always keep hearing content tab. So you'll not be able to differentiate which of the content tabs is he on at the moment. So make it user-defined. Then, okay, so it's using focusable, true, correct, and the focused and selected. So this one has just looking at the accessibility tree, this one uses the best structure among all 3. I don't think there's any issue here. The only issue is just this tab list title, that is the area label. It should be user-defined. So that's it for the HTML. So now we'll go on to the next set of tests, which is the mouse test. Let me close this up. Just close everything up. And just to make sure that everything is working, so just click on the mouse. See, first there is the hover state, which is nice. Then when I click, it works. So it's working for the Elementor tabs. So pass for the Crocoblock tabs is also working. So pass. So that's also working. So all of them, they're all working with the mouse. So now we'll go with the keyboard test. Let me make this the active state. So when I press the tab key, I should go to the videos tab. Let me press the tab key. That works. Let me now press the left and right arrow keys. So left works, right works, and then it cycles around. So that is correct. So I now test with the up and down arrow keys. The up and down arrow keys should not have any event listener. So let me press up. Unfortunately, it has an event listener. That is not good. So you need to take that off. Up and down should not have any event listeners. And then so this is using the manual activation. So I have to press either enter or spacebar to trigger the tab panel. So let me press spacebar. Yes, that works. And then press tab. So like I said, because it doesn't have a tab index of 0 on the tab panel, if we are using the ideal case of having a focusable element as the first element, this will be perfect. But in a scenario where we have the tab panel not having any focusable elements, just watch what happens. If I press the tab key now, I cannot get access to the tab panel. And the only way for us to get access to the tab panel is using the tab key. So a screen reader user will just be lost. He will not even know that there's an information there. He will skip it, and that will be a problem. So just add a tab index of 0 on the tab panel. But yeah, those are the 2 problems now. First, they should not listen for the up and down arrow keys. And the second one is that the tab panel is not focusable. So let me go to the JetTabs and see. Okay, let me now press the tab key. You should go to the videos tab. That's the first problem. That means they're putting tab index of 0 on all the elements instead of only on the active element. The other should have a tab index of -1. So that's already a fail. Let me press the left and right arrow keys. So left, right. Okay, and they're not making it cycle. It's not cycling. So once you get to the end, it stops. Ideally, it would be nice for it to cycle from the last to the first to the last, so that it's easy to just go through. So that's the second thing they need to include. Make it to cycle back to the first item when I get to the last item. And let me now try with the tab key to see if I can get into the tab panel. So tab key. And that's the next problem. The tab key is, because they put the tab index of 0 on all the tab list, so it's now going from one tab list item to the next. And that means a keyboard user will have to go through all the tab list items before it gets into the tab panel. Because what they did is, if you're using the left and right arrow keys, it is basically doing the automatic selection. But when I use the tab key, it isn't selecting, it's just tabbing, which is weird. So basically, if I want to now get access to this link, I'll now have to tab through. And when there is no focusable element on the page, like on this videos tab, I will not even have access to it. So if I go, literally, I don't have any access to it. So a screen reader user will not be able to access the content of the videos tab. So that is a problem. Now let me try with the breakdance. Do the same thing, put on videos tab, and then tab to it. Yeah, the tab key is working. So let me press left and right arrow keys. Left is cycling through. Right is also cycling through. So perfect. Then let me try with the up and down arrow keys. So up and down. They're not listening for up and down arrow keys, so correct. Now press the tab key to see if it focuses on the tab panel, and which it does. Focuses on tab panel. If I press tab key again, and now get access to the link within the tab panel. So yeah, they are following the specs. And if I press tab key again, it should go to the next section. Yeah, that's correct. So breakdance is following the specs perfectly, while the other ones have just little issues, especially the Crocoblock. They need to fix a lot of problems with the Crocoblock tabs, but Elementor is workable and breakdance is perfect, basically. So now that we're done with the keyboard test, we'll do the screen reader test. And that's where we now notice all of those issues that I mentioned, like the area label and the area expanded, which is on the JetTabs. So let me go to the Elementor tabs and then open up NVDA screen reader. I'll leave a link to where you can download it. It's free to download for Windows users. If you're a Mac user, then you can use VoiceOver. So let me press the shortcut to open it up.
Tabs, Elementor tab.
So yeah, we're in there.
Link skipped. Banner landmark Davden home menu main landmark Elementor tabs davden.co.uk visited link.
So now I'll press the tab key, which should take me to the videos tab, and hear what it announces.
Tab control. Videos tab selected 2 of 4. And
as you can see, that area label that they added was not announced because it was on the wrong element. But yeah, it says tabs control, which already gives me the indication that this is a tabs control, and now I need to use my left and right arrow keys to navigate. And it tells me that this is the 2 of 4. So all of the information I need is given to me. Now here's the problem that I mentioned. I cannot access this tab panel using the tab key because there is no focusable element there, and the tab panel doesn't have a focusable element. So if I press the tab key,
other videos, visited link,
I literally cannot get access to that tab panel.
Tab control, videos tab selected 2 of 4.
And if I use the left and right arrow keys,
home tab 1 of 4, videos tab select, playlist, community, home tab 1 of 4.
If I use the arrow keys up and down, let's see.
Videos, play, home tab 1 of 4.
So I'm stuck, basically. Now let me see if I can even access the tab interface properly when I have a focusable element. So let me go here.
Home tab 1 of 4.
Press enter.
Home tab selected 1 of 4.
Then press the tab key.
Home property page dummy link.
So it tells me home property page because it has that relationship using the area controls, area labeled by, and everything works. And it tells me the dummy link. So yeah. And let me try and use the up and down arrow keys, which is what screen reader users use to navigate sentence by sentence. So I press up arrow key.
Clickable tab community.
So now a screen reader user has very little way of accessing your content. Even though they've gotten into the tab panel, they can't actually read your content because the up and down arrow keys are listened for by Elementor. So it goes back into the tab list rather than scanning through. Let me show you an example. Go back to this page.
Accessible tabs. Davden.co.uk visited link.
So
Accessible tabs tab home property page, the home page with links to the latest videos.
So you see,
This is the first tab to test if the focus moves into the tab panel.
So you see, I can access the information there because the focus is on the entire tab panel. So it reads out the entire tab panel to me. Whereas with the other one, it just goes straight to the link. But when I now try to go up and down, it takes me back to the tab title. So that's the problem because they are using an in-between method. They are listening to the up and down arrow key and they're not adding a tab index of 0 to the entire tab panel. So that's why it's creating a problem for the screen reader users. So now let's go ahead and test the next one, which is JetTabs.
Davden.co.uk visited link.
So now let me try. Tab key.
Tab control. Home tab selected collapsed 1 of 4.
See, two problems here. First, what is actually selected is the videos tab because that is what is active. But it's telling me home tab selected. And then it's telling me expanded as well. So there's already a problem. We are giving me too much information. Let me go back and do it again.
Davden tab control. Home tab selected collapsed 1 of 4.
You see, so it says home tab selected and then say collapsed. That is not the information that the screen reader user needs to hear. It just needs to hear home tab 1 of 4 because it's not selected. It won't tell you that it's selected. But now it's telling me it's selected even though the tab panel is not actually selected. So there's a problem there. So I'm going to press the right arrow key.
Videos tab selected expanded 2 of 4.
So it's not telling me selected expanded.
Playlist tab selected expanded 3 of 4. Community tab selected expanded 4 of 4.
So it's using both information, both selected and expanded, which is wrong. It should only just tell me selected. It doesn't need to tell me expanded unless this is an accordion or like a drop-down, fly-out menu, that kind of thing. So you need to remove that area expanded. So now let me try with the tab key. So let me go back to the first one.
Home tab selected expanded 1 of 4.
So let me press the tab key now.
Videos tab selected collapsed 2 of 4.
So it's now telling me select. So I guess they're doing some weird way of moving the area selected and area expanded. So basically if I use the tab key, it says area selected but not expanded. If I use the arrow keys, I don't know, there's something wrong with the way they are using the area information here. So they need to fix it and they need to be able to give the tab panel the tab index of 0 while the tab list items that are not active, they should have a tab index of -1 so that when you're getting focus from outside of the tab list into the tab list, you just go straight to the active tab list item. So let me try with the last one.
11y.ins break large davden.co.uk visited link.
Let me press the tab key now.
Content tabs tab control. Playlists tab selected 3 of 4.
Because they gave it a name, contents tab, that's why it says contents tab control. So that contents tab is a fixed name. They need to be able to change it so that it describes adequately what the tab is actually representing. But it tells us, okay, it's the playlist tab and it's selected 3 of 4. So it gives us all the necessary information, which is perfect.
Videos tab selected 2 of 4.
Okay.
Home tab selected 1 of 4.
Okay, so
Community tab selected 4 of 4.
Yeah, so everything is perfect. So let me press the tab key here now.
Community property page content section title heading level 3
So basically they put the tab index of 0 on the tab panel. So once I tab into it, it starts to read the entire tab panel, which is not ideal, but is the only way a screen reader user will be able to get access to this tab panel. So that's why you have to just put the tab index of 0 on the tab panel. Unless you can make sure that the first item within the tab panel is a link. if you cannot ensure that, which we can't ensure that in Page Builder world, so just put the tab index of 0 on the tab panel. So yeah, I think the Breakdance tabs, they are following the specs to the best way they can. The only issue that they just need to change that naming so that we can change that name from the content tab. But otherwise, I think they are following the specs in the best way possible. So if you want a complete breakdown of all the issues that I found, then you can just check the next section and then I'll show you everything. Thanks for sticking around and watching the video. I really hope that the Elementor, Crocoblock and the Breakdance team will look into the video and sort out any issues that were mentioned, and we'll have a better and more accessible product. So until next time, stay safe and enjoy. Bye.